Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, an entitled Mega Karen refuses to move her car for an EMT and insists she must go first. She blocks the ambulance and then gets what she deserves. Here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. As an EMT, I unfortunately get stuck seeing plenty of Karens on a daily basis. They vary from the people I am actively trying to help to the people I am trying to keep calm and contained until police can arrive. Since we are on duty though, there is not much we can do about Karens. I don't want to bore you with any of those basic stories though. Instead, I want to tell you about the biggest Karen I have ever witnessed on the job, and for once we were able to do something about it. My rig was called to an emergency where there was a car crash on a major road. It was a total mess, and besides us, the fire department had come due to some cars being badly damaged and people not being able to safely get out of the cars. I'm gonna try and paint a picture for you the best I can of what everything looked like and what it seemed happened. It was a single-lane road, and it seems like somebody tried to go around another car by going into the oncoming lane. It did not work, and they ended up having to quickly turn back into their lane and crashed into another car. Then another car behind them that could not brake in time ended up also being part of the crash. A 3-car accident like this is not the worst I've ever seen, sadly, but it becomes a serious situation. We had to get the people assessed and see if they could move and if they had to go to the hospital. They only called one rig because it seemed like only one car got badly damaged and the person hurt. So we split up and I went to check on the other 2 people to make sure they were not hurt and just in shock. Meanwhile, my partner went to attend to the person that was hurt and going to be the one we rushed to the hospital first. The 2 were fine, and since I was not the police, it did not matter to me who was at fault or any of that stuff. It just mattered that they were not hurt. You might be wondering at this point which one of these 3 drivers was the Karen. If you guessed any of them, you would actually have been wrong. While we were loading up the driver to go to a hospital, I noticed that a car was trying to get past my rig. Due to the accident, we closed both sides of the road and people were just going to have to turn around and go down a parallel street instead. It was a spot that a detour was possible. This woman was a mega Karen though, and either did not seem to notice or did not seem to care that there was clearly an accident we were trying to deal with. She had the nerve to constantly honk her horn, and I finally got fed up and walked over to her. Because of where the crashed car were, she was blocking the only direction we could take the rig. She had to move in order for us to move the ambulance. Me, you cannot go through here. Karen, I most certainly can. It's my tax dollars that pay for this road. It's my tax dollars that pay for your salary. That makes me the boss of you. And I'm telling you to move those cones and let me through before I'm too late. Me? Ma'am, as you can clearly see, there is an accident that took place here. There are broken pieces of car and glass all over the road. It's closed and you have to turn your car around and take a road name instead. Karen, I'm not moving until you let me through. After dealing with so many Karens on a job, you know when it is pointless trying to reason. She then basically lays on the horn, letting out a constant noise that could only really be rivaled with our siren. We did not have time to play games though. We needed her to move in order to move the rig and get it to the hospital. We actually did not know what we were going to do about the whole thing. I had never been in this exact situation and was not entirely sure what I could do. Especially in order to make her move that would be legal. Who do you think came in to save the day? If you guessed my partner or the firefighter, you would once again be wrong. Remember how one of the people in the crash was there because he could not brake fast enough, so he hit into the accident. It turns out that he was an off-duty cop. The rules in place are different, but I guess the rule is here that if you are off-duty and get into an accident, you cannot be on the scene officially because of bias or whatever. The thing is, the issue we were having with Karen was considered separate and he was allowed to step in without any kind of legal issues. He opened Karen's car door and yanked her out of it. The entire time she was screaming assault because she had no idea she was dealing with a cop. He then handcuffed her and I guess was able to make it clear over her screaming that he was an officer and that she was under arrest for obstructing an emergency vehicle. By the way, I know some of you might be worried about the passenger needing to get to the hospital, but don't worry, it was taking time to load them into the rig while we were trying to deal with Karen. The whole thing happened pretty fast, all things considered. Her car was still there and the police told us that basically it was not illegal for us to do what we had to do and her car would just have to suffer whatever happened to it. It felt good to finally feel like something could be done about the Karens that I had so many bad experiences with. So we got out of the area by basically pushing her car with the ambulance out of the way. The entire time she was screaming that we were destroying her car and she was going to sue us for this. If it wasn't a stressful emergency situation, I would have probably laughed. Our patient got to the hospital with no issues, but I really wanted to find out what happened regarding Karen and the police officer. Since it was not far, we were able to just go back as long as we did not get another call coming in. By the time we did though, Karen was gone and I could see her car being hooked up to a tow truck. The officer was still there and he told us that after we left, he basically gave Karen two choices. Despite breaking the law, he was willing to let her just take her car and go, thinking what happened was a decent enough lesson. She was not going to go with that option and did not calm down, so the officer ended up having to go with option 2. He called for backup to take her to jail and have somebody on duty actually do the work of arresting her. As for the car, it was going to be towed at her expense and labeled basically as abandoned in the middle of the road. Anybody who has a job where they need to deal with Karens knows the pain of wanting to do something but not being able to do so. I hate that it had to happen because of an accident, but I love that for once a Karen got the karma she deserved and I was not stuck trying to deal with it while not getting in trouble. I still have no idea if she was just that dense to the situation or did not care that people were hurt and we were stopping her for her own safety. Either way, I hope this is a new chapter for Karens to stop getting away with harassing first responders. And yeah, ripe stars, as you can see, some people's entitled behavior just knows no boundaries. And to be honest, that's actually exactly what I sometimes see here in Thailand, because some people refuse to make way when an ambulance is behind them. I don't know if this is due to ego issues or whatever, or simply not caring, but it can be awful. Anyway, let's continue to the next one. This one is from Petty Revenge. So, I was working at a fairly small meatpacking plant with about 45 employees. The butchering was done in another part of the plant. We would clean, process, sort and package the meat before shipping it out to different retailers around the area. We had a lunch and break room where everyone would leave their lunch boxes while we were out working on the floor. For the most part, the break room was empty most of the day, except during our 30-minute lunch or our 2 breaks that we were allotted each day. The door to the break room was basically situated behind all the production lines, so the door was inside while we worked, but nobody had a reason to keep an eye on it. As it turns out, people began to notice that their dessert would be missing out of their lunches, someone would remember putting cookies in their lunch, or stopping and buying a candy bar and it would be gone by the time lunch or the last break would come around. Nobody really knew how long it had been going on until we all started talking. Even once we all figured it out, it was happening, it continued to happen with 2 or 3 people lunches a day. We would try to watch the door to the break room, but there really was not a way to track people going in and out. We would jokingly accuse each other, but never could figure it out. Until one day someone came up with a brilliant plan. Being how we worked in a meatpacking plant, we used an edible ink that was used to stamp different grades of meat. We also had syringes used for injecting different marinade or brines into different products. 4 or 5 of us all brought hostess ding-dongs to work in our lunchboxes. If you don't know what a ding-dong is, they are a dark brown chocolate cupcake with a cream center. Perfect for extracting a little petty revenge. We used the syringe to suck out as much of the cream fill as possible through the packaging and injecting them full of the thick blue ink. It left a small hole in the package but was otherwise unnoticeable. We then put them in our lunches and waited. It only took a few hours when suddenly the processing line erupted in laughter. Our plant manager, who was the only one in the building who wore a tie and a white dress shirt, came running out of the break room and towards his office. Not only was his lips and chin covered in the blue ink, but it had run down the front of his shirt and was even on his hands. He disappeared into his office and we did not see him for the rest of the day. I'm not sure what the man had to bathe in, but the next day you could barely see it on his lips that we were told by his secretary, as he did not show his face back out on the production floor for several days. In any case, our desserts and candy stopped disappearing from our lunches and all was good in the world again. And the next one is another petty revenge story, and please let me know in the comments if you enjoy these petty revenge tales. Personally, I really enjoy petty revenge. Anyway, this was 16 years ago. I'm a hairdresser and I love doing color. In the early years of my career, I went to a lot of traditional color classes, so I have an in-depth knowledge of color theory. I had been working in one particular salon for a few years and had brought/grew a damn good clientele when I got pregnant for my twins. I was in my 30s at the time and there was a lot of concerns about my physical well-being by my team of physicians. While pregnant, my employer found out she had cancer. I'm very loyal to people I consider a friend, and when I tell you I went above and beyond even while experiencing a high-risk pregnancy, it's not an exaggeration. I was supposed to be cutting my hours, but instead I would frequently open and close her salon a few times a week, picking up more hours being as I was the only one of 3 people that had a key and the alarm code. I literally did everything I could to assist her during a very stressful and scary time in her life. She used to even go so far as to joke that I would drop my twins on the salon floor. I worked such long, hard hours. I also have to add that during this time I caught my twins' father cheating on me when I was 6 months pregnant and dumped him immediately. This is going to be important info later on. After 3 hospitalizations and 3 weeks out from my due date after the last 24 hours, I finally started my maternity leave. I was back to work 1 day a week 3 weeks after having a C-section. So 6 weeks total maternity leave, and 2 weeks after that I was back to my regular work schedule with newborn twins. I will also add that my twins' father was being an a-hole, not showing up for scheduled weekend visits, jamming me up on childcare, and overall just wreaking havoc in my life. While all of this is going on, one of my clients informed me that they were being encouraged to schedule with another stylist since my employer did not believe I was gonna stay because of my babies. And yes, of course I was staying. I was a single mom, I needed my income, and every time you switch a salon, you're projected to lose 10% of your clientele at least. There had also been a few passive-aggressive comments by my employer, you know, the one I had gone above and beyond to be supportive of while she was going through it, about running late or needing to reschedule clients last minute because my ex was jamming me up. She also started complaining about me double booking, which I had been doing for years and is SOP in this line of work. Needless to say, I saw where this was going, so cue my petty revenge. I proceeded to take all my client cards home that we were mandated to keep at the front desk and change all my color formulations to their target colors only. My employer noticed my cards were missing and called me asking where they were. I gave her a BS story that info needed updating and I would bring them back my next scheduled workday. The following week, with no notice, I was terminated. But my revenge was already in motion. I heard from another stylist a few weeks after that my clients were getting pissed. These clients were being assured that the other stylists could provide the same service as they had the color formulations and the caveat they were giving discount prices to keep the clientele. So not only were they trying to undercut me financially, but trying to use my knowledge to do it. But these nimrods proceeded to mix exactly what I had on the cards when a cursory review of the client's hair and a basic knowledge of color theory would have indicated what was on the card was not an actual formulation, but the target color. Imagine orange hair instead of a deep red violet or extremely brassy in lieu of a beige blonde. That's right, people had to think for their money and not ride my coattails. I might have not been able to keep all my clients, but no one else was going to make money off of investments I made in myself either. To this day, I absolutely refuse to leave my formulations accessible to anyone else and have never ever trusted another employer to have my back. Sorry to any of my old clients who may be reading this if you got jammed up in my petty revenge, but to know me is to know that this is in par with who I am. Thanks to the one who caught it for me. Edit number 2, just to answer some frequently asked questions. When I lost this job, I lost my childcare, so there was a slight delay getting into a new salon, as I had to find an alternate solution that did not involve 2 babies in daycare. I contacted all my clients via email after my termination and offered to do house visits until I could get established in another salon. Some took me up on it, others gambled. The twins are now 15 and we are all doing well. I got married a few years ago to a real keeper. He loves my kids and is an awesome provider. And the next one is titled, Getting Petty Revenge Done Right. I had finally went fully no contact with my parents. I love them, but I don't think we have ever really liked each other. They were controlling and judgmental and honestly just a lot to deal with. Their love was conditional, and if you were not doing things or living the way they wanted, they would cut you out of the family's life until you got back on track. They already had little access to my life, but one thing I did allow them access to was my streaming services. I have basically all of them and gave my parents the usernames and passwords. My parents did end up making a lot of their own accounts because somehow my accounts would end up being used by people I never gave them access to. So I changed my passwords every so often to kick the outliers off, and they got tired of having to ask me. The only account they still used was their favorite, my Apple TV. I had personally logged into it on only one TV in their house because I didn't trust them with the password to my entire Apple account. I honestly rarely used Apple TV. If it wasn't Ted Lasso or a movie I bought/rented, I did not really care. But my parents were constantly on it, and once they even called me upset because I started watching one of my movies and they had been watching it at the same time, and I guess it messed it up and started over. A month or no contact goes by and I decide I want to watch one of my purchased movies, and what do I see? My parents, who apparently want nothing to do with me, are still enjoying their favorite shows on my account, not giving a damn. Blackbird, Loot, For All Mankind, Players, The Bankers, my whole Up Next feed was filled up with their shows. I was pissed. The audacity of verbally abusing me to the point where I went no contact but still using my crap, it's astounding honestly. So right there and then I logged into my Apple account, changed the password twice and logged out of all devices. The small chaos that ensued gives me giggles to this day. Apparently my mother was in the middle of the finale of Loot when I logged her out, and season 3 of C was 2 days from being released, which my dad is a huge fan of. According to my inside source, they ranted for days about how petty of a witch I am and how low I had to stoop to kick them off when they were not doing anything wrong. How dare I do this to them, unprovoked and out of the blue? What a horrible daughter I was to snatch away something so meaningless, something I did not even use anyway. I don't know if they ended up making an account of their own or gave up. All I know is it makes me giggle every time I see a commercial for an Apple TV show, knowing I got the smallest of petty revenges. And Ripe Stars, if you have ever gotten petty revenge or any sort of revenge on somebody, then please let us know what happened in the comments. I would love to hear it. Either way, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you again tomorrow.